Talk and Shop Network makes no apologies for what you're about to hear. The host might, though. It's the $9 Podcast with Drewski. Because moderating for Pro Wrestling's Good Brothers wasn't enough work. Talking wrestling and more. Weekly on all major podcast networks.
And another week of the $9 Podcast has started. Hey, it's Drewski. I am the moderator of the Patreon for the podcast known as Talk and Shop, which is the official podcast of Machine Gun Carl Anderson and Luke Doc Gallows. And this is episode 44 in total of the $9 Podcast, but this is the fourth one for the masses. And you know, after another wild week in the wrestling world, and just when you think you got a handle on things change hourly. Trust me on this. Things just change by the hour. This episode is going to be pretty much AEW centric because they had a weekend. Boy, did they have a weekend. The Double or Nothing pay-per-view arguably was the best pay-per-view the company's ever put on. And it's been universal acclaim for it. At least 4 or 5 matches. We get them. Are more than qualified to hit the Magic Meltzer 5-star rating. And so a lot of storylines were paid off. It's like primarily Takeshita versus Okada. That was a match that's been built for the better part of a year, over almost a year and a half. You know, there's something to say about the slow burn. They had to wait till the right environment, you know, the right time, and being at Louis Armstrong Stadium in New York, sold out crowd. The crowd was hyped for it. We treated the match like it was a G1 final match, which elevated everything. And it helped that Okada put on his working boots and treated it as such. Yeah. And, you know, congrats to Takeshita for regaining his title. And see where it goes from there. Because, you know, Forbidden Door season is coming up. When the main event was Darby Allin and MJF, when they started intimating, like, the past couple Dynamites and Collisions, that MJF was heavily implicating that MJF was going to be shaved bald. You know, I've seen enough wrestling to know that the opposite was going to happen. It's basically when they tell you too much, believe the opposite. And was it the right decision? Probably, I would say, because, you know, love him or hate him, MJF is on a legendary run. Is on a legendary run, and he's doing great media work for the company as a heel. You know, it's very Nick Bockwinkel-esque in terms of, you know, media relations. And it helps, you know, boost everything about the company. It's like, don't take that off him anytime soon. They're going to save it for All In. I know. Because because they have a big pay-per-view coming in like in a couple months, and they're starting to build for that. And Osprey becoming more of the assassin that he used to be in New Japan when he was with Chaos. Thanks to the Death Riders, Death Riders tutelage, apparently. But but Will's back to being more like he was when he was a junior heavyweight. Size-wise, but he had to change up his game a little bit because of his neck injury. In storyline, it provides a plausible explanation of why he has to why his style has to change. Like kayfabe reason, when the real reason is too many injuries, and you can argue that the new new ground game version of Ospreys is just as deadly as the aerial version. I'm sure people will have their qualms. I've already seen some of the more grifter takes about how the pay-per-views are still too long. It's like they're just griping just to gripe. Really? These are the same people that want him, have been since year one been wanting Tony Khan to like put Dynamite up head to head against Raw to rekindle the Monday Night Wars, rekindle something that happened like 30 something years ago. Now, it's like, no, why? Been there, done that. Right. It might have, could the pandemic have delayed this? I wonder if the pandemic was a blessing in disguise, because I think a younger Tony Khan would have taken the bait. But having to adjust during COVID probably changed his mindset about that thing. But that's just a wildly uneducated guess on my part. It's not like I'm charging $9.99 for a month for like wildly uneducated takes. It's interesting to see how where the company's going from here, because they're you have a lot of irons in the fire. They have talent coming back. They have talent coming in eventually. With Cope and Cage winning the I Quit match and winning their first tag title in about 25 years. Still with the one face, one heel dynamic, which is fucking hilarious. As their interaction on Dynamite earlier tonight proved. It's the sort of thing where it's like, will they, won't they? Right? And another thing about Double or Nothing is they really, really are expecting big things for Kevin Knight, apparently, for having him like finally turn heel by doing a UFO splash on Darby, who was on a stretcher in his match with MJF. Signals his TNT run's going to be an interesting one, and especially with what happened on Dynamite. Because let's see, on Dynamite, right off the bat, he came out and tried to explain himself, and you got the Don Callis treatment right off the bat, because they're Philadelphia. They weren't going to listen to a word he's saying. Just basically, whole lot chance that are reserved for like anytime Don Callis talks. Kevin Knight was getting him. That's great. That's great. That means they're doing something right with him, right? But having to break, the only bad part about it is they sort of breaking up the Jet Speed tag team. Him and Speedball were really good together. But I'm not sure if they're really broken up, because so one thing about AEW, it's like the shades of gray thing. They like to lean into a lot. So, sure, I could see the way they have it set it up. Looks like Speedball is going to challenge for the TNT title against Kevin. Wouldn't be the first time they've fought. They fought before in the Indies. They'll probably fight again. It's like it'll be very interesting. It'll be really interesting. It's also interesting that the Owen Hart tournament got into the quarterfinals, and one of the quarterfinals matches. Well, they had two quarterfinal matches. One was like Jungle Jack Perry against Mark Davis. And it was the right decision. Mark Davis going on, because he's been putting on a run. He's been putting on a hell of a run. And the return of the former Jake something, also known as Jake Doyle. That leads to like interesting implications in the future for the Don Callis family. And the same with Takeshita, basically rejecting the Don Callis family and finally going on his own because of the actions of Kyle Fletcher. They set up Kyle Fletcher going against Takeshita for his belt soon. Only now Takeshita is affiliated with goes from one faction to another, apparently. Goes from Don Callis family to now being affiliated with the conglomeration. The thing about the conglomeration is they sort of like mirror the team that he was in DDT. It was like Schadenfreude International with Mao. You've never seen Mao. He's a doozy. Great talent, but he can arguably do Orange Cassidy better than Orange, which is saying something. And him and Takeshi was part of that with Chris Brooks, otherwise known as the giraffe in Choco Pro. And basically there's similar roster similar like faction construction. So his DDT experience is going to help him out a great deal. So you're going to be seeing a little bit more of the comedy side of Takeshita, which he does really well in DDT. And he does very well. And they started to tease Kenny. Started to tease Kenny and Will for All In eventually, with another like vignette in the training room. With Mox overhearing. It's like everybody's fighting for Ospreay's soul. It's like, it's very interesting. They can go so many different directions, right? which is a good thing, which is a very good thing. I find that Samoa Joe leaving again just after coming back to the ops, just because Twisted Metal 3 season 3 started and he's got to be on set to be Sweet Tooth. You know, timing wise, it's not very good for that faction, but it could lead to interesting things while he's gone. It could, because they have to cement. Yeah, they have to cement Hook as like a devious leader, to eventually kick Joe out of the ops when he comes back, or he has to go recruiting for more people. Again, something to watch in the future. Man, you're starting to see teases of the New Day going at a convention, basically calling out Kenny Omega on Instagram, saying it's on site. It's on site. It's like, that's a 10-year feud waiting to happen. Just it's got people like just marking down the days. In terms of like the Motor City Machine Guns, they're saying the 90 days is up like 3 days before the new AEW pay-per-view, which is Redemption, and the Dynamite after Redemption is in Detroit, Michigan, which is Motor City's backyard. Obvious booking is obvious sometimes. The women's version of the Owen, it's intriguing because there's a wild card involved. And we're going to find out who the wild card is next Wednesday. All because Willow had to take herself out of the tournament. It leaves an opening, and there's so many different ways you can go. Especially with Forbidden Door season, it could be somebody from Stardom that hasn't been there. That could be inserted in the tournament. Would not be bad at that at all. No. It's intriguing. What MJF's going to do. Because he's got Mark Briscoe, both Briscoe. He sort of has the same problem that. No, it's not the same problem. It's basically it's got the pretty much the entire locker room coming for his head, just like last time he had the title. Now he's the one being chased. And he's got a locker room full of killers wanting to go after him. Last night it was like Mark Briscoe calling his shot, and then Rush calling his shot, and Rush is going to get his shot next week. It's mainly because he was penciled in to be Darby's next defense if Darby had won at Double or Nothing. I'd like to see that bit of a continuity. And plus, you got Andrade just waiting in the background, waiting for the time's right to call his shot. And I have a feeling there'll probably could be Redemption. It could be. I don't know. I don't know. They'll save it till All In. That's the thing. It's like a lot of the cards still up in the air for All In. And there's so much talent. It can go so many different ways. I know I tend to harp on it a lot, but it's an embarrassment of riches to pull from this roster. It's like about 30 or 40, at least 30 or 40 different other talents you can plug in, and the pay-per-view quality would not skip a beat at all. You know, that's not even counting like Jericho. Just when you think Jericho is out, lost it, he reinvents himself. It's that's his superpower, is reinventing himself. He can see when his character becomes stale, and he'll tweak, take a break or tweak stuff to change his character around enough to like get himself over again. And he's been doing it for decades now, and he's doing it again. It's like, is he as fast as he used to be? Like in when he was Corazon Leon? No. You can see the age. You can see his, the steps a little. Steps like a little slower, right? And he said he weighed in like 210 pounds. Yeah, well, I'm not sure about that one, but because wrestling weights and heights are usually exaggerated. The one thing that kind of very much continues to perplex me about Dynamite and Collision, because it was a 3-hour shows. How the hell is Rocky Romero sneaking in and getting paychecks every Dynamite / Collision? I mean, hats off to Sleepy Hood for Horkin, right? Between that and main eventing in Arena Mexico every week, plus doing all the behind the scenes stuff with, for Forbidden Door, and making sure everybody's on the same page. And apparently there's a Grand Slam for Mexico supposedly happening in August as well. That got announced earlier in the day, which means it could be that Arena Mexico might be getting a little AEW visit. It'll probably be a special Dynamite in August. And should be interesting to see how they try and work that in with the build up for All In, because All In's like a couple weeks after that. So there's a whole lot of juggling of talents involved. Plus you got to remember, it's like NFL season is about to start, and August is like preseason for the Jaguars, and Tony's going to get TK's again. Well, might get distracted again. Well, you also have the World Cup going on next month. No, not next month. Like a week or two. So he's got there's Fulham talents like on the U.S. soccer roster. So he might be involved in some of that stuff. I'm sure he's got it figured out, and be entertaining as hell to watch. What I'm interested in Also, what I'm really interested in this week is how my AEW is starting to position themselves as a replacement for Triller, as far as like wrestling organizations to stream, because TK came out during like a presser and basically admitted, yeah, we would like to have other organizations join up with us and partner up with us for the streaming service. And as a result of the streaming service, the AEW content that was like on New Japan World is going to be terminated after Forbidden Door. Just be exclusively on the My AEW app for like international fans and national fans as well. And yeah, the reorganization of New Japan is something to actually keep an eye on, because it's fun. It's a little. It's early days on it. And I'm not really cognizant of how the business structure is in Japan, how it works. But the company, Bushiroad, basically sold all their shares to Cyber Agent, which is like the parent company of Cyber Fight, and they, a certain percentage, and as well as a TV Asahi, which is like one of the major TV networks in Japan, and both TV Asahi and Cyber Agent own 46%. It's not no majority. It's sort of like it's a partnership. But makes you wonder who owns the other 10% or so. 46. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's like 92%. Who owns the other 8%? That's they didn't really specify that. What I saw. But the thing about Cyber Agent is now they have percentages in percentage of ownership in New Japan, Pro Wrestling Noah, Stardom, and Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling, which are like four of the major pro wrestling companies in Japan. And some would say that smacks of a bit of a monopoly. In U.S. eyes, it would be a monopoly, but I'm not sure. It's like it depends. Again, it's early days. We'll see, like a couple months down the line, what their plans are. What the statements I saw on that were that they're trying to build up their online presence. They figure their live events itself are fine. They don't really need the help. It's just that they want to build up their online presence. For reasons. And we shall see what happens. As far as I know, Tanahashi is still president for now, as far as I know. But stranger things have happened. Yeah. It seems that in pro wrestling that phrase, stranger things have happened, is more common than anything, especially in the last 10, 15 years. So, speaking of Pro Wrestling Noah, right now, Machine Gun and Gallows are over the Neo Global Tag League for Pro Wrestling Noah, and they're there for 3 weeks, and they're 3-0 in their matches right now, and their next match is in Korakuen in a couple days. So of course the boys have a couple days off. So what are they doing? getting vending machine coffees, well, at least Machine Gun is getting vending machine coffees, walking around, destroying Japanese steakhouses, and basically, trying to do as many like Japanese talking shop episodes as possible. They're apparently doing like 3 this week. They've already done 1. That they already did one that was like pretty much old school TDH style because it was like about a half hour long, and it was just random. It was just straight nonsense in the classic talking shop way. And it's got 2 more weeks of this stuff, and then they come back. And, they have, they're talking about how much fun they had in Australia with their tour for WSW, and they announced that they're going back in October, which is going to be interesting. It'll be New Zealand, and first time in New Zealand in like years. It's like 5 shows. I think it's 5 shows, and heading right into what Australian summer. So, it's amazing. The Hoots, the Hoots travel card is filling up like months down the line. That's a good thing, and it's a very good thing. It tells you that the scene is healthy, and there are places that they can work. And another place they could probably work, I believe, I'm thinking, but it's my opinion, will be either Progress or Defy Wrestling, because about a day or so ago, Big Damo and Nikki Cross entered an agreement to buy both companies, in which Progress, them with Progress is a very good thing for the UK scene. Because at one time, Progress was considered one of the leading lights of the British independence before the Me Too movement basically nuked most of it, and WWE tried to kill it with NXT UK, and Defy. Defy is like one of the big super indies in the U.S. based out of the Pacific Northwest, and where Swerve Strickland and Brody King and Darby have all honed their craft there, and it'd be interesting to see how they run both. I think they will do a good job. It's something to say. Promotions run by talent, run by actual people who've had experience of talent, instead of like money marks. Because they know how workers are. They put up with their foibles, and again, it's a we shall see thing, but it sounds great on paper. See what kind of shows and they bring to the table in the future. Because for years they've done fantasy booking on TEW streams with Mansoor and Mason Madam on their Twitch channels. They've fantasy book shows and stuff, so they sort of have experience with it, but it's not the same really. But it wouldn't hurt. It doesn't hurt that to have that kind of background. I think. Yeah, I'm just grasping at straws there, because it could go wrong. It could, what a very Timu Meltzer rant stance on that. It's like saying one thing, but it could be another. Things change. That'll be $9.95, please. No. Yeah. Sometimes you overthink stuff. Right? It's better to leave it alone. You know, it's like I don't want to overthink them. The AAA naming Rey Mysterio their new general manager. It's it's good. Great for Rey. It's a big honor. But it's almost like they're pushing him out the door before he's ready. It's like it wouldn't be the first time they've tried to push him out before he's ready. So he shouldn't be able to retire on his own terms if he chooses to. But but Rey is Rey. It's like, and he's a luchador. Luchadors can wrestle pretty much forever with their style. And I'm just, again, it's another thing that sounds great on paper, but I'll be interested to see where it goes, going forward. It's, like I said, it's been a very, very interesting week for like new news, and that bodes well for. Could bode well for wrestling's future in the next 12 months. We'll wait and see. It's like, what sounds good on paper, like now, 6 months from now, 6 months from now could be something way different. Extremely different. Much like this podcast could sound way different, like 6 months from now, more or less. Yeah, okay, I'm running out of steam here. Let's get the hell out of here. We want to support the boy. Merch shilling, as usual. Money, anything, a little bit helps. Goes back right into the product, the podcast. Because I got people downloading, downloading this, and thank you very much for doing it. But help support by going to like $9podcast.dashery.com. Pick yourself up something. You want to see old episodes of this? The video versions of the episodes are on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/the $9podcast. If you want to email this fossil, it's like the $9 podcast at yahoo.com. And to reiterate, you can hear this show worldwide on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, iHeartRadio. And if you want to support my bosses, you can go to patreon.com/talkingshop. And jump into the chat, say hi, mingle with the people that put the Grunt Gang together and the Bump and Feed podcasts together. And there's more podcasts coming from the from the Falcon's Nest. It's just a matter of herding cats, because a lot of people have have lives. Right, and you have to carve out time. It's a combination of us having real life, actual lives, and then trying to get hold of globe-trotting Machine Gun and Gallows to like send stuff to. It's like, hey, I sent you episodes like on an email a couple of weeks ago. You checked it out yet? And it's like sometimes they can't get to it, and it is what it is. It's like you just have to roll with the punches. And it's it's been a fun month already. We're not even like we're heading into summer, and we got SummerSlam coming up, and we got Clash of Italy, but the people aren't really paying attention to. Really, honestly, it's like, but they're paying more attention to what's going on behind the scenes in WWE than that was actually, in front of the cameras, as usual. So, it is what it is. So I'll go ahead and see you people next week.
Thanks for listening to the $9 Podcast. Support the show by going to the $9 Podcast or going to patreon.com/talkinshop to dive headlong into the insanity. See you next week.